Hello, my friends. How are you? Welcome back to Transformation Tuesday. Just wait for a few people to jump online. How are you guys? If you're jumping on for the replay, hello, how are you? Wishing you an amazing Tuesday. I've had a lot of inspiration for today's Transformation Tuesday. I've had some incredible client sessions today, and there's been an epic theme that's been emerging, and I think this is a theme that a lot of people are going to get benefit from, which is self-worth. So for those of you that are tuning in, for those of you that recognize that there's maybe another level of self-worth, self-trust, self-love, ultimately honoring self, a whole nother level or dimension that you feel like you're yet to access, or maybe you just recognize that there's hey Dora, hey, how are you? Good to see you here. Maybe you recognize there's just another level of confidence or another level of the zest of life. There's another level that you haven't yet accessed. Then I trust this is going to serve, because I'm going to unpack self-worth, self-love, self-trust to a level deeper than perhaps is normally discussed and normally shared. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys, and I'm going to give you some practical tools, some techniques of how to boost your self-worth, your sense of self-love, and understanding a little bit more about, well, what is it and why is it important? Because it gets spoken about a lot. And I want to share with you some insights and some really important distinctions that I wish I kind of learnt, quite a few years ago, that certainly add a whole new dimension of amplifying and maximizing and really boosting our sense of self-worth and self-love. So let's dive straight into it. Hey, Zach, how are you, brother? So first of all, let's start with, well, what is self-love? What is self-worth in the first place? Well, what is this? We talk about this a lot, love, like, it's important to love yourself. Well, let's take a look at, what actually is that? All that really matters is that self-love is an internal job. It's an inside job. Self-love is simply our decision, and it is a decision. It's a decision for how much we want to love ourselves, a decision for the level of self-acceptance. It's a decision about how much do we like ourselves. Now, we all know that we've got lots of conditioning, we've got limiting beliefs, we've got fears, we've got all sorts of things that prevent us from accessing that highest level of self-love. And the way to recognize that there's always a higher level of self-love available to us is recognizing that if we had the highest level of unconditional love for ourselves, we would be walking through life in bliss, because we wouldn't let the opinions of others influence us negatively. We wouldn't outsource our emotional well-being to the thoughts, the opinions, the actions, or the results of anything other than what we choose to experience about our reality. So what does all that mean? Well, what this means is that our self-love, our self-worth, ultimately it's the decision about how much we choose to value ourselves and how much we choose to love ourselves. So it's an inside job, and it's simply a decision. But it's a decision that a lot of people aren't consciously aware that they're making. Now, this is the key. The key is recognizing that it's a decision. Now, hey, Sandra, how are you? So self-love is ultimately a decision. But what are the standards around self-love? Well, I want to share with you that we've all got rules around self-love. We all have rules around what is our opinion of ourselves, of us. What is our opinion of us? That's what self-trust, that's what self-esteem, that's what self-love is. So we all have rules around, if this happens, then I experience self-love. If I do this, then I give myself permission to experience self-love. If my external circumstances, or if my bank account reaches a certain number of digits, or if when I stand on the scales and my body weight says a certain number of kilograms, then I now give myself permission to feel self-love. So what this is a recognition that we all have a set of rules about when we give ourselves permission to experience self-love. So our self-worth ultimately is being determined by an external factor. Now, this realization, when this penny drops, when this realization drops for most people, and it didn't drop for me for a long time, so I'm going to focus on this and emphasize this, is when we have an external rule that something in our external world some criteria needs to get met before we give ourselves permission to feel self-love, That's the highest form of sabotage. That's the highest, most disempowering way of viewing our reality, because our internal world, which is the only world that we have access to, is our internal reality. Our internal reality becomes diminished because we're now reliant upon X, Y, and Z criteria in our external world becoming satisfied for us to then feel self-love. So, for example, I coach a lot of clients, and I've just had a coaching session I've had a number of coaching sessions today, and this has been something that's come up for a lot of clients, is a lack of self-worth, a lack of self-love, and ultimately a feeling of disempowerment, that their external world doesn't match their internal expectations. Now, when our expectations don't match our reality, that equals suffering. So the way to view this really is understanding, well, if we have a rule that we can only love ourselves when this, and this in my external world matches up, when the combination lock of all the different factors that I expect in my life, if and only if all those things become present, then I feel self-love, then I feel self-worth. Well, that's a very disempowering way to live your life. And I've got to tell you, I lived that way for a long time, and it was actually quite painful, because when you try and make your external reality a certain way in order to give yourself permission to feel self-love, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. When you try and get your friends to have a particular opinion of you, or if you're wanting a certain number of likes on Facebook, or if you're wanting your bank account to have a certain number of digits on the end of your bank account before you give yourself permission to feel self-love, that's the long way around. It's a very, very difficult way to do it. Now, I'll give you the contrast. Instead of having a rule of when my external world is that, then I love myself, how about this? How about I choose to love myself regardless of whatever my external world is doing? Regardless of how much money I have, regardless of how healthy I am, regardless of what the opinion is of other people around me, which is another big one, is we outsource our sense of self-worth to the opinions of others, right? When we recognize that we're able to decide to have the highest level of and highest opinion of ourselves, not an arrogant opinion or not an egotistical opinion, but a genuine sense of self-love, that is the highest, most valid, most empowering way we can possibly turn up in life. Now, again, it's a recognition of if we have these external rules outside of our control, then that's a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for completely disempowering ourselves to never experience self-love. So we want to make these rules for when we experience self-love. We want to set these up in our favor. So I'll give you some examples of really empowering rules that you want to create for yourself around self-love, which is things like, I choose to experience self-love when I recognize who and what I am, which is a beautiful, unconditional being of light that is here I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. Other rules are things like, I feel self-love when I reflect on how grateful I am and how unique I am as a human being. I experience self-love when I recognize that I'm doing the best that I can with the resources that I've got. So these are some rules that are all internal. They're all determined on us, and they have no external influence on anyone else. So we can decide to feel those whenever we want on demand, and they're set up in our favor. Now, contrast that with having a rule that, okay, I give myself permission to feel self-worth and self-love when X, Y, and Z, when my bank account's that way. Or when again, this is another rule that people have around love, is I experience love when someone else does this, this, and this. Hey, Lauren, how are you? So again, people have a rule around when my husband takes out the trash, then I experience love. When my partner tells me they love me, then I experience love. When my partner touches me in a certain way, or when this, and this, and all these factors happen, now I give myself permission to feel love. That is externalizing your reality. That is ultimately, and again, we live in a world where, yes, we live where there's external things happening in our world. Hey, Prue, good to see you here. How are you? And ultimately, where we truly master our reality, where we master our consciousness and become masters of our absolute destiny. Hey, Bella, good to see you here again. How are you? When we become masters of how we do reality, we can step out of this reliance on our external world needing to give us all these criteria to be present before we feel love, and we can just decide to feel it regardless of what our external world is doing. Hey, Frida, how you doing? And that is mastery of life. That is ultimate mastery of life, when we can ultimately step outside of the external experience. Thanks for the love, brother. When we can step outside this external experience, step internal, and decide, I'm going to create my reality based on my own rules, my own internal perception of reality. Glad you're feeling it, baby. Good to see you there, Prue. So that's the first recognition, is we need to create awareness. And there are multiple degrees and levels of awareness around how much we're outsourcing our self-love to the external world, to the circumstances of our world, because that's all they are. They're simply circumstances. So again, a lot of people, they create a rule around their sense of self-worth. For example, a classic one is whether or not they're in a relationship, right? If you're in a relationship, then I feel worthy. I now feel love, right? So if you add the relationship, great, feel love. Take the relationship away, don't feel love. Again, that's an external factor, right? That's driving our internal version of reality. Same sort of thing with money. You know, some people have got a rule around, if I've got less than $1 million in my bank account, I don't feel worthy. I don't feel like I'm valid, right? So again, this is all just made up. All these rules are just simply external circumstances which we're just creating. But let's be honest, these are all just rules that we're making up. So why not make up rules that serve us and support us? So this is the first recognition, is where our sense of self-worth, where our sense of validation comes from. If we are relying on external validation, if we're relying on an external criteria to be met, we're always going to fail. We're always going to fail to uphold that level of self-love, self-trust, simply because our external circumstances are never going to be perfect. There's never going to be 100% of all the criteria in all the world that are going to be met, right? So it's complete and utter ridiculousness to expect to rely on all the external factors to all line up to give us that sense of self-worth. So that's the really important thing. Another really important thing that ties in here is the opinion of others. We let the opinion of others determine our self-worth. Now, this is fucked. I'm sorry, but someone else's opinion of you, like, this should have absolutely no bearing whatsoever. Hey, Graziella, good to see you there. Someone else's opinion of you, if someone has a bad day and they wake up and they've got an opinion of you and they just say, blah, you're an idiot, you're a fool, you're a clown. Now, their opinion of you has absolutely nothing to do with you. Like, that's just their stuff. Yeah, you're right. It's ridiculous. Thanks, Lauren. It's absolutely fucked, because someone else's opinion of us, it's simply their opinion. It has no bearing in reality. Now, this is the other thing to recognize. If someone else's opinion also, right, doesn't have any truth to it, then this is going to be water off a duck's back, and you're actually going to ignore it. Now, I'm going to really emphasize this one, because this is super important. If at some level, someone else's opinion of you gets through your defense and it impacts you on some level, there is a lack of self-worth. There is a lack of self-love. There is a lack at some level, because what we're now doing is we're now outsourcing our truth, but letting someone else's opinion infiltrate ours. So what that means is that it means that we have a gap at some level. Because if we didn't believe it to be true, we would simply delete it. We'd ignore it. Yeah? Yeah. Hey, Bella, thank you. I'm learning that slowly. I know that, but some things trigger. Yeah, look, this is an ongoing journey, and this is a journey I want to encourage everyone to have self-compassion around, because this journey that we're going on, it requires courage. The journey to look inward and to really have the courage to go on this journey of expansion and growth and really do the work, do the internal work to grow us, to develop us, to cultivate that resilience. It's a journey, and it's a journey to be had, and it's a journey well worth the trip. But ultimately, this is a big clue, and this is a big trigger, is if someone else's opinion affects us, that's a sign to say that we've got some work to do, because it means we're externalizing or outsourcing our sense of worth, our sense of self-love to someone else. Now, I want to give you an example here. Let's just say, for example, if someone has an opinion on your best friend, and someone says, your best friend, John, I think he's an idiot. Right? Now, if you don't, you obviously, you're not going to take that opinion on, because someone else has got an opinion of him. If they've had a bad experience of your friend, you're just going to delete it. You're not going to let that carry any weight, are you? Like, someone's got an opinion of my best friend, whatever, they're wrong. Whereas if someone has an opinion about us, we take that on. It's ridiculous. Hey Matt, good to see you, brother. So again, if someone has a comment, an opinion about one of our friends, we just delete it because we know it's not true. But if someone has a comment or opinion about us, we now take it on. What's the deal? It's kind of ridiculous because we know at the deepest level, we kind of know, well, I don't really believe it. But at some level, it triggers us. So what's going on here? Well, what's going on here is at some level, there is a lack of self-trust, lack of self-love. There is a sense or a need for external validation to reinforce our belief that when we give ourselves permission to love ourselves, pardon me. So ultimately what that means is there's still work to be done until we get to the point where we can go through life where the opinions of others, right, and the circumstances in our environment no longer diminish us, no longer trigger us to have that emotional experience. We know there's still some more work to be done. And again, this is to be approached with compassion and acceptance and a recognition that we're all human. And this is part of the human condition, is that we naturally rely on the external world to give us that validation. So it's reclaiming our power, it's reclaiming our authority, that we don't need the opinion of others to validate ourselves. This is stepping into our power and stepping into a very powerful place where we can internalize and have our own internal viewpoint about when we decide to love ourselves, not outsourcing that to others. Hey Lauren, you now come from a sense of curiosity where I wonder why, here we go, sorry, I'm just going to read that out. Why a person sees it necessarily be judgmental. It's their problem, not mine. Yeah, totally, Lauren. Yeah, that's a beautiful point where someone else has an opinion. If someone else wants to judge you, that's their stuff. What's actually happening there is if someone judges you, at some level, they have an internal self-worth conflict because they feel the need to diminish you to make them feel better. So that's where judgment comes from. Judgment is one of the needs of the ego. And I've touched on this on one of my other Facebook lives. And I'll touch on it again because I think it's really important. Is if we're ever indulging in judgment, at some level, it always comes back to self-worth, self-love. It comes back to some gap around ourselves. Because if we feel the need to judge someone else, we've got to understand, well, why do I feel the need to throw negativity onto someone else? We've got to get curious here. Hey, Bella, thank you. We've got to get super curious here. Look, it's a process to work through emotions. And look, we're all on the same sort of journey. We're all on the same journey of understanding. Hell yeah, I love it, Lauren. Hey, Tom, good to see you here, mate. We're all on this journey of understanding what makes us tick. And we're all on a journey, ultimately, the ultimate journey in life is to understand who and what we are, to remember what we are. And self-love is at the cornerstone of everything that everyone's actually desiring. Not everyone is acutely aware of that, but what it does is it sits at the bottom of the rabbit hole. Because when we have ultimate self-love and self-trust, that's the antidote to everything in life. Because if we truly love ourselves unconditionally, there could be bombs going off in the external world and it's all good. We're sweet, we're taken care of. So that's the ultimate level that I'm shooting for. I may or may not ever get there in my life, but that's the target. That's what I'm striving for, is ultimate self-love. And I know if I'm still being triggered to some degree, I know there's still work to be done. And look, there's a lot of work to be done for a lot of us. And I think it's embracing that journey. It's embracing that doing the work to get to that internal place of self-love. It's a journey and it requires daily processes, daily practices. I love that. What other people think of me is none of my business. I love that, Frida. It's so true. If someone else has an opinion of us, fuck that opinion. Like literally, fuck it. Someone else has an opinion of us, good on them. They have an opinion. Is it accurate? Has it got any basis in reality? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. So again, we've got to recognize to stop taking on the shit of others, stop taking on the judgment of others, right? Simply because someone's saying it to us. We have to check in and actually assess something for the validity, right? The validity and the accuracy of the content, and not make it mean anything about us at our core from a self-worth point of view. Yeah, it's a process, Bella. So where was I going with that? That's right. So ultimately, judgment is someone else wanting to diminish us. Someone judges you, they're wanting to diminish you. For what purpose would someone else want to diminish you? Well, there's a multitude of reasons. The ego is a very cunning software program that gets loaded on. Now, sometimes the ego pretends to be coming from heart space, right? Sometimes the ego will want to judge something and diminish it and claim to be coming from a very righteous place. Ultimately, if we're diminishing something, we're throwing negative energy at it. That's not actually heart space. That's coming from a place of ego. It's coming from a place of fear. It's coming from a place of resistance. So we can go through life and we don't have to judge. We don't have to judge anything. We can come from a place of discernment. So I want to emphasize a key principle here. There's a difference between judgment and discernment. Now, this is a critical principle that we need to understand, because this will give us clarity about when we're judging and when we're not judging. So the classic example that explains this metaphor is, let's just say, for example, if you're going to go and order some ice cream. Now, let's just say your favorite flavor is vanilla, whatever your favorite flavor. Let's just say your favorite flavor is vanilla, and you got the choice between ordering vanilla or chocolate. Now, you could walk up there and you could say, oh my God, I hate chocolate. Oh my God, that's disgusting. Or you could just walk up there and say, okay, chocolate's not my favorite flavor. I prefer vanilla. Right? So that would be an example of discernment, where you go and make a decision. Chocolate, vanilla, which one will I have? I'm going to go with vanilla because I like vanilla. Now that is discernment. Now, when we live our lives like that, that's how we stay connected. That's how we create a sense of self-love. That's how we stay tuned into heart space and spirit. Hey, Bella. So ultimately we can decide to either judge or discern. So what is judgment there? Well, judgment is when we're diminishing an option. It's where we're lowering it and making it invalid. So in the example I just gave about chocolate or vanilla, if we say, oh, chocolate's horrible, how could you ever want chocolate? That's judgment. You don't have to say that. We don't have to do that. We can just say, I prefer vanilla. Why do I prefer vanilla? Well, because that's the flavor I like. I don't particularly like the flavor of chocolate. We don't have to diminish it and make it invalid and throw negative energy at it. We can just simply go, cool, I'm going to go with vanilla instead. So at any moment in your life, when you're throwing negativity at anything, you're judging it. And when you're judging it and you're throwing negativity at it and you're diminishing it, you're wanting to invalidate it, which on multiple levels, multiple degrees, it's taking you out of connection with your heart space. It's destroying your connection with your higher self, and it's letting the program of the ego take over. So this is an important distinction, because whenever you get drawn into judgment, goodbye connection with self. Goodbye higher self connection. Goodbye heart space connection. You get drawn into the ego. The ego loves to judge. The ego loves to compare. And the ego loves to diminish. So, hey Lauren, yeah, good to see you there. Thank you. Yeah, the Dr. Emoto rice test. Yeah, I've seen it. The power of thoughts and emotions, it turns the rice and it makes it go black and moldy. So, this is related. That's I guess one of the external factors or external examples of the evidence of that negative energy. Also, we can look internal and see, okay, cool. If I'm judging, what am I actually doing internally within me? Because if we are judging, our vibration gets lowered. Our resonance, our vibrational frequency, our harmony is diminished. Because what we're now doing is we're now indulging in judgment, we're indulging in negativity, we're indulging in kind of throwing shit all over the place, trying to make ourselves feel justified, trying to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. But what it does is it severs our connection with heart space and it fires up the program of the ego. So that one distinction is incredibly powerful, because what it now lets you do is it lets you recognize where are you coming from heart space and where are you coming from ego. If you're judging, you're certainly not coming from heart space. Hey Mariana, how you doing? So that's a game changer. This is an absolute game changer. When you recognize how much we judge, either judging others or judging ourselves, we can then start to recognize that that's the killer of self-love. That destroys self-trust. That destroys any hope we have of staying truly connected with heart space and with our spirit. So again, we need to become aware of every single time we judge. Every single time we judge, we destroy the connection with self. So judgment is the program of the ego, and the ego is, the ego is it really is a cunning beast. It really is. It's like a virus that gets loaded on your computer, and it fires up sometimes without even knowing that it's running. So try that distinction on. Have the recognition. Hey Lizzie, good to see you here. Try that on. Recognize the distinction between judgment and discernment. Next time when you go and make a decision about something, or next time you see something that triggers you, recognize if there's diminishment, if you're diminishing something, if you have an element of resistance or fear to it, your ego is running. Your ego is running you, not your heart space. Yeah, ego is a cunning beast. So again, recognize that we don't have to come from a place of judgment. Like if we don't agree with something, we don't have to get fired up and get afraid and angry at it. We can simply go, okay, well, that's an option that I don't particularly prefer, and I prefer the other option. That's how you stay connected with heart space, as opposed to seeing something that you really, really hate and you're throwing negative energy at it. That's how you get drawn. That's how the program of the ego starts to fire up, and that's how we kill our heart space, our spirit connection, which means we have no hope of maintaining self-trust, self-love, and self-worth, because our vibrational frequency just degrades to the point where we lose connection with our higher self, and we just ultimately lose that sense of connectedness. So this is a critical distinction that is really powerful. When you become aware of judgment, both externally and internally, your ability to love yourself goes up exponentially. Hey Bella, yeah, our brain literally tricks us. Hey Prue, when would we fire up anger appropriately? Oh, look, that's a whole nother Facebook Live. That's a good question. Look, at the end of the day, the definition of appropriately, look, that it's very much context dependent. Look, I think you'd probably agree. Look, if someone put your family at danger, look, I would say that's probably an appropriate context to fire up anger. Definitely. Yes, it's going to take you out of heart space connection. However, in the moment, it may be the best thing to serve you. So again, what I'm giving you here is I'm giving the distinction around, for most situations in life where we get triggered unnecessarily, where there's no actual tangible benefit. Hey Alistair, how you going? I'm giving you, I guess, the really simple, clear-cut examples of going through life where we get triggered unnecessarily, where there's simply no benefit. Look, there are some times in life where there is a benefit where we can get angry. There is a benefit, I guess, if you like, on some level. It really is a context dependent, and that's probably a good question for a whole nother Facebook Live. Thanks for the question. I wanted to keep this one super short, guys. I wanted to give you that distinction of judgment. I also want to give you the distinction of creating the internal versus external rules for how we experience self-love. Hey Heidi. I'd love to cover that one in a whole nother Facebook Live, because that goes a whole nother level deeper again. I trust that the internal versus external rules around self-love adds a layer or distinction. And I also trust that the judgment versus discernment distinction also serves as well. And because when we fire up the ego, whether it be anger, fear, sadness, rejection of our reality, we destroy the heart space connection. And this is what this is really about. It's about how do we stay connected through the most part of life. The more connected we are, the more we're coming from heart space, the less we're letting our ego take over. And when our ego takes over, the contrast or the if you like, the impact can be devastating. So that's the distinctions I wanted to give you guys today. Thank you guys so much for your comments. I'm sorry I just missed a couple of comments there. Hey Bella, it's okay to be angry but balanced. And the anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, grieving, all these negative emotions, they're always context dependent, and again, it's a much deeper, more involved conversation to really unpack that. And I look forward to doing that at another time. Thanks, Heidi. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Bella. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Please, if you guys have any questions, again, send them through. I love to always add as much value as I possibly can and share with you the questions that keep coming through. So thanks, Dora. I really appreciate it. Wishing you guys all the best. Thanks for tuning in to Transformation Tuesday. Thanks, Lauren. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all for all the love. Keep sending through your questions, and I wish you guys a fantastic week. Stay connected. Stay in heart space. Recognize where the judgment's creeping in. Remember to love yourselves. And as always, I love you guys lots. Thanks, Daddy. Thanks, Frida. And I look forward to seeing you guys again for next Transformation Tuesday. Thanks, Peru. Lots of love, guys. I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.